Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 151 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and author of the book From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impact on Your College Campus and Beyond. Go and check out the great reviews for this new book on Amazon and pick up your copy today. Now, we call these podcast episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. After you listen to this podcast episode, you will learn what universities can do to offer better services and more appropriate accommodations for students with physical disabilities, as well as the things that our fraternities and sororities can do to be more attractive to students on campus who have physical disabilities. So please stay tuned, check out the entire episode. And don't we all want to feel like an equal in this world? Don't we all want to feel self-sufficient and not feel like we're a burden on other people? Can you relate to this? Our guest today certainly can. When will we finally create a world where those who have disabilities won't have to continue to fight for accommodations? We have with us today Bridget Gum. She is a student at Rider University. When Bridget was an infant, she developed a rare autoimmune disorder that attacked her spinal cord and left her paralyzed below the upper chest with partial control over 4 limbs. It's a condition that Bridget has learned to work around, and she's very prideful of the way that she compensates for the physical disabilities. Welcome to the show, Bridget.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm really excited to kind of have this conversation and get awareness out. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, it is my pleasure. It is my honor. And by the way, I love that background. You know, I've seen a lot of TikTok videos showing how to make that. I think it is very cool.
I cannot take the credit. That was all my parents.
They did a great job. It makes me happy just looking at it. That is awesome. All right, so I want to make sure our listeners, they have a little bit of background to your story, which I felt so compelling that I had to reach out to you and your chapter to see if we can set this up. So I'm super excited about talking to you today. On November 11th, 2002, you were found in your crib completely limp. Since you were a 7-month-old baby at the time, obviously it made it very challenging to diagnose because you couldn't communicate your loss of sensation or ability to move. After 6 months of living in and out of hospitals, and you nearly died a couple of times there, you were finally diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder, and it's called transverse myelitis. What is transverse myelitis?
So it is a series of neuroimmunological disorders, and there are a couple, and each affect a different part of the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And certain ones are reoccurring. Thankfully, I do not have the reoccurring one. But basically what happens is, the body gets confused. It's an autoimmune disorder, so it attacks its own immune system. But for these series of disorders, it also attacks a part of the nervous system. And for me, it in fact attacked my spinal cord. And it resulted in a spinal cord injury. Usually you hear that from like a car accident or something like that, but this is slightly different. And it's really, really rare. So at the time I was diagnosed, it was like 1 in a million, but they've gotten better at diagnosing people. So it's a bit more common now. And honestly, it has like a wide range of symptoms. They're better with diagnosing and treating it now. So people have less symptoms, but I'm a quadriplegic. So that just means that I can like move my shoulders and I can move my hands around, but I don't really have hand function and I cannot use my legs at all. But basically it also affects your internal organs. So you were right. I did have I almost died a couple of times. That's because of the respiratory issues, because anything below the chest, right? So it is really extensive, and because it's so rare, there's not a lot of research done as to why this happens. It can affect you at any point in your life, completely randomly. So they don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's so good that you're here to talk about it, because you're really shining a light on this issue for other people to educate them. And so you were only able to have movement and sensation from your shoulders up, and your family treated you normally. So when you went to school, finally, you were made aware of just how different you were. You grew up in an almost entirely able-bodied community until you were in fourth grade. Then you finally go to a family summer camp made entirely for other people with this particular disability. And you mentioned that this was a life-changing experience for you. So why was this such a life-changing experience?
So I think the biggest thing for me is yes, I was completely unaware. Not that I mean, obviously I used a wheelchair, that's how I got around. I wasn't unaware of that. It was just that the fact that this was different from other people. And there's actually a really funny Huffington Post like comic series done by these sisters who have cerebral palsy. And it showed like, them in kindergarten, and there's like that higher desk for her wheelchair, and it's like, it says completely oblivious, and all the students are looking at her because she's different, but like she's oblivious. And that's basically what I was. So yeah, I quickly realized that, I was different. It was very obvious. People ask me questions all the time. And it's not something I mind, to be honest with you, because I kind of grew up with it, but it became very obvious. But anyway, in fourth grade, I believe it was fourth grade. It's been a while. So I can't 100% remember, but I want to say fourth grade. It was so incredibly life-changing for me. I went to therapy, and most people in therapy in my county are elderly, or recovering from a sports injury. So they're going to be fine soon, or, sometimes I went for more intensive therapy and there were other people there, but most of those people are older men, because that is the spinal cord injury population significantly is older men. Well, older than a kid was what I mean. Anyway, so it was really hard for me to get that social aspect. Sorry, my dog might bark. Anyway, it was hard for me to get that social aspect. And I was always constantly comparing myself to able-bodied people, because, actually I'm a competitive person, and that was what I had to measure against. And so I go to this camp, and this is the first time that I have seen people with my disability, people who use wheelchairs, walkers, canes, whatever, who can't use utensils normally, and completely immersing myself in that culture. That's when I started educating myself about disability history, disability culture, being an advocate, getting adaptations, all sorts of stuff was stemmed from me being, welcomed in this community of people like me, but also being inspired by what everyone, being inspired by what everyone was able to do even with their disability. So it was incredibly empowering and freeing, to be honest with you. And I could talk to people about medical stuff, or the fact that like I wanted to do a sport and I couldn't do that, or whatever. And we could have these kinds of conversations, and usually what ends up happening is they give you a ton of resources and they're like, check this out, try it. And I was like, okay, I will. So it was really amazing for me. And I do go every year, minus the pandemic. So I've been going for a very long time. We constantly meet up with my crew. No, I'm kidding. The same people come back. And, now that I've been doing this for so long and living my disability for so long, I'm often known as like the welcome wagon. And so it's really funny because my mother, what she'll do is she'll like hear about newbies, newly diagnosed people, sorry. And she'll be like, that girl's shy, go talk to her. I'm like, okay. So our crew keeps like expanding and everything. And it's really great now because I'm fairly independent. So I get to teach everyone else. Like the biggest thing I do is I help a lot of girls with makeup. And you would think no hand function, like that seems weird, but I learned how to do it. It took me forever. It took me an entire summer, but I figured it out. And so now I teach the girls at camp how to do it. And we have to adapt things, obviously, because none of us have the same function level, but it's really fun. And I help people, I educate them about stuff. I'm a resource. We have group chats and all sorts of stuff. And it's just amazing, to be honest with you.
I love it that you're out there helping others. I think that is just incredible. And then to top it off, in eighth grade, you were diagnosed with epilepsy, and this is completely unrelated to your previous disability. So now, how does this change things and the way that you look at the world?
Oh my God, so crazy. The biggest thing for me is that I clearly physically was not going to be integrated into this society. And I accepted that a while ago. But the challenging thing for a lot of people is that my brain does not match my body. And I'm really not trying to toot my own horn here. But when I was little, I couldn't play with other people because they were running around. So I would read. I was a huge nerd. I still am a nerd. I claim it proudly. And so, no, baby, you're a good boy. Sorry. Anyway, I claim nerdhood so proudly. Like, it's fine. I'm okay with this. But because of that, I was an avid reader and I would always learn new things. And my intellectual ability was higher. And it was strange for people to be like, this doesn't match up. Like, she can't physically do a bio lab. Why is she in an honors bio class? Like, those kinds of things would come up. So intellectually, my identity was so important to me because I could articulate myself and I could do all these things. And I was a fairly, smart and intellectually driven person. And so when I had epilepsy, Enzo, stop. Sorry. When I was diagnosed with epilepsy, I don't know how much you know about it, but I had a form of epilepsy. They are grand mal seizures. So it's a whole body and you forget things 100%. So I didn't recognize my own mother.
Wow.
Hold on 1 second. I don't know why they're freaking out. Stop. Okay. Anyway, when I first got to the hospital and woke up and regained consciousness, I didn't recognize my own mother. And eventually things started to come back. In fact, now in my phone, every new contact I have has that little like company description because I've been on my phone being like, oh, I literally, one of my best friends was a guy. I was texting him a lot and we're super supportive of one another. And I was just like, oh, this must be like a boyfriend, I guess. It wasn't, it was my friend. So that was awkward. But anyway, and then I was put on meds for it too. And those meds are really strong and they in fact affect you cognitively and socially, which are my two favorite things about me. So it was just devastating. I was on them for 2 years and it was god awful for me because it was like I was disconnected from my body, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know if you've seen Doctor Strange, again, nerd, but like that part where he can like separate his soul from his body. That's kind of what it felt, but not in the cool way. Like, it was just, I was watching myself do stuff and I was like, why are you being mean to these people? Why are you being antisocial? Why can't you put this together? I would study and study for hours and still forget stuff. Wow. And it was really challenging for me. And actually my sister recently was also diagnosed. And it's the same thing, except hers is way worse than mine was. She had 4 seizures. I only had 2, and she's on a way stronger dose than mine. And it has to be taken like this exact time. We were 5 minutes late one night and she had a seizure. It's much more serious than mine is. And, I see the similarities with her, and it's challenging for me, to see that she's struggling through something that I was struggling with. And there's not much you can do. She has to be on the meds for her own safety, but they were impacting her just as they impacted me. So I just try to be a support to her, to be honest with you. And we are very close. So that's not hard. But for me, it was just, I was feeling like I was stripped from the one part about my identity in this able-bodied world that I really felt confident about at the time. And it was very challenging.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just blown away. I mean, you're a support system for so many people. It just blows my mind. And so you ultimately decided on Rider University for your undergraduate experience. So why was Rider the best choice for you?
So I had to do in-person tours for every college I went to because there's no resource out there saying this is accessible and this isn't. And even if they did say that, is this accessible for someone who uses a wheelchair or for someone who's blind? Like, not the same thing. Right. So my dad and sisters and I, it was a great summer. No, I'm kidding. They did not like it. Anyway, we all went on these tours. Some of them were fantastic and others were god awful. And it was very challenging because some of the schools that I thought fit me a bit more academically were god awful in terms of accessibility. Wow. So that didn't pan out, but whatever. I did settle on some places, and Rider happens to be close to where I live. That was actually not a selling point for me because I really need my independence. But anyway, so I went to open houses is truly how this happened. And went to Ryder's open house, and I went to a lot of colleges open houses, but I have a friend who's 5 years older than me, and she has almost identical function to me. So it's great because every time I have a problem, I'm like, yo, what did you do for this? And she's like, oh, I did XYZ. So and I want to give her credit for this. And she said, use terminology, use abbreviations, and see if these people know their stuff. And the woman I talked to, Disability Services, did. And she knew her stuff like front way, back way. And the best part too is like, oh, we've had a student who had this problem already. Or like, oh, we just do this, like, this is the form for my service dog, because I have a service dog. She's like, this is the form for a service dog, no problem. Or even there was a couple issues that she hadn't dealt with yet. And she was like, that's not going to be an issue. I already have plan A, B, like, and I was like, this woman is a freaking badass. This is awesome. So I felt very confident. And then honestly, I'm not going to lie, I got into, and so knock it off. I got into a car accident in November.
Oh no. It
was a very bad car accident, actually. And I really haven't felt safe in a car since. And so I stopped doing open house tours because you have to drive to them. And I was still recovering. I didn't have a wheelchair for 3 weeks. So I couldn't even leave my house. Wow. It was a very bad accident, to be honest with you. And it was really funny because we had to get cut out of the car, and they opened the car, and she's like, wait, she was already in a wheelchair? This never happened. And so me, like, trying to find the humor in a really bad situation, laughed at that, of course. So anyway, so it did really stop my process. But Ryder had, had checked all of the boxes that I needed. There was an honors program, which I am in because, I needed to find a better academic fit for myself. Not that Ryder isn't, but just like more challenging for me, and then they have a lot of great programs there. They have the majors that I wanted to set. Like, I felt pretty set and pretty confident in making that decision.
Got it. All right. And you're also a member of Phi Sigma Sigma Sorority. So what was it about Phi Sig that made you feel like this was the right organization for you?
So I'm very passionate about social justice, not just for disabled people, but obviously I call them the minority group because no one ever talks about us. So I try to represent them more because they're not being talked about, but I really am passionate about social justice just in general. It's something I've been passionate about for a very long time. And, we have this like recruitment night. You go to all these different Zoom meetings or rooms, whatever, and you get to talk to these people from different sororities. And I was talking to people at Phi Sig, and, I noticed someone's like background had like, it was like a women's equality plaque, something. It was really cool. And it was like multicultural too. And I was like, that's awesome. And then we started talking about social justice. And honestly, they would ask me questions about my life. And in Zoom, you can't see that I have a disability. Right. So there are people in my class to this day that do not know, which is bizarre. That's the first thing people see about me. It's the first question they ask me. And it's just the way it is. I don't love that, but whatever. So anyway, so unless it comes up, I don't really bring it up. Like, if it's not relevant, I'm not going to be like, oh, by the way, I have a disability. Like, right. Like, and be like, where did that come from? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. But, it came up. We were talking about social justice. And I was like, I'm really passionate about disability rights because, I have physical disability. I feel like they're not drawing enough attention to it. And that was and honestly, the conversations I have with people in recruitment and the people I met and how excited they were to have me. And they knew everything about my disability. And it didn't really seem to matter much. And that is a lot of my friends, my able-bodied friends, I'm not going to lie. But I've also had experiences with other people I wanted to be friends with who did care a lot. So it was really nice to walk into that kind of environment. Well, not really.
Sounds like the perfect fit. That is really good. Now, we should talk about what's going on right now. There seems to be some public pressure on Ryder University to make the Phi Sigma Sigma sorority building on campus accessible for those with physical disabilities. And I know some of the students have started a popular social media and internet campaign. I saw the TikTok videos, online petitions to push the university to action. And now there's over 9,000 signatures on that petition. The university seems to be willing to do the renovations to the building, but have you received any kind of timeline for action or any information in terms of how long it's going to take?
That is a great question. So no, I have not really. So this is, first of all, anytime I've had an issue historically with accessibility on this large of a scale, it doesn't happen because I leave the school. So, I went to this K-8 school. It was East Amwell because that's where I live. And they, 2 years after I graduated, added an external ramp to get to the front side of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So context, I was there since preschool and I used a wheelchair obviously that entire time, but it was only 2 years after did they actually make some, and not to mention the fact that the doors actually, when you open it, it swings towards you. So like, and your back is to the stairs. So like you straight up could fall. So
Right.
I'm always terrified getting into that building because I've been very concerned of just tumbling downstairs. But anyway, so yes, that is my issue. Is it that, to clarify, no one actually said refuse.
Mm-hmm.
That was some misinformation, which is
Right.
okay. I've been going around correcting any misinformation. But to be honest with you, the thing that really bothers me about the situation is not the fact that I don't have a timeline. I expect it to take long.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the fact that the house isn't already accessible. Everywhere I go is pretty much inaccessible. I make it work. It was, I think it was really the response that the university gave was challenging for me. First of all, I knew they were going to hinge their argument on the word refuse. I knew that. Was I still sad to see that happen? Yeah. I was really hoping to be pleasantly surprised, which I was not. And the other thing that's really challenging for me is that we had a meeting with the sorority and the people who were in charge of making this decision. And first of all, they did seem extremely condescending. Again, very used to that. I still don't like it, but it is the vibe I got from them. And, they were really hinging on formalities and explaining the process and everything. And they were kind of talking in circles and not really giving us facts, not really giving us timelines, not really giving us, and a couple of the people kept saying things like, if it's a reasonable accommodation, if it's needed. And literally we're in this group chat and I text out to the group chat and I'm like, at this point, I'm just going to borrow some chairs from the hospital and see if they think it's needed then. Like, spend a week doing my life, which I bet you won't make it through the week,
Mm-hmm.
and see then if it's needed. I understand, I don't understand the funds of the situation, but I understand that there are funding situations, contracting situations. I understand how complex this is. But to phrase it as that kind of, someone actually called, one of the people in the meeting actually called the list of things that I needed accommodated a wish list, as if I were like asking for a little jacuzzi and a nice little balcony view and all these things. And I was just like, okay, don't love that, but let's try to. And so the other thing that is frustrating to me, and it's also not new, is that, my decision is up to able-bodied people. And without living my experience, there is no way that you can accurately tell me if these accommodations are needed, to use their terms. And that's the biggest thing for me, is that if this, two things. One, if this was their life, they would be just as upset as I am. They would feel just as excluded, and they would want it fixed just as badly as I do. But it's not, and they have no way of knowing my life and knowing what I experience and the feelings that I'm having. And there, from my end, it seems a lack of willingness to empathize and to really work on the solution.
Yeah.
The other part that frustrates me isn't the lack of representation, because again, not new. It's the fact that it's not new. The fact that not Ryder as a whole, but that this country as a whole has done a really good job at systematically excluding people with physical disabilities, but all disabilities. And they do it really well. They offer all these online things so that we never leave our homes, so that we don't have to go out and see how actually inaccessible, because that would cost money. The ADA is rarely enforced or checked up on, or even checked up on by someone with a disability, which would be the most effective way to do it. And, it's challenging to prove that this, in fact, is discrimination just because of my wheelchair. How do you prove that one? Not to mention the fact that the lack of accommodations, personally, and I know a lot of friends, if you don't feel a part of that society, why are you staying there? Like that was something that I was really thinking about. Why am I in a community that is not willing to support me? And I don't love that. I don't really want to leave Ryder at all. And I don't think I will, but I can't say that specifically, but the way that I'm being treated right now is very challenging, very upsetting. And it makes me angry, to be honest with you. It really does. And I don't want to leave my friends or the things I've done here or the groups and people that know me. But I also don't want to be in the situation.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging. I didn't have an option with high school. I didn't have an option with grade school before that. I have one now, and I'm really not sure.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you're going through this. You shouldn't have to go through this. And I know you just want to be with your sisters. And I think that's completely reasonable. I would want to be with my brothers, just like you want to be with your sisters. So I totally get it. And hopefully this conversation is going to help to speed things along. So that way you can get that ramp put in at the sorority house and we can make this thing happen together. So it's my hope that other students are going to watch this, that they're going to like it, they're going to share it. And maybe, just maybe, we can finally get the change that you're looking for. That's my hope.
That would be, honestly, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So just generally, I mean, if we take Ryder out of it, I mean, what can universities in general do to offer better services and more appropriate accommodations on college campuses for other students who have these physical disabilities?
A couple of things, to be honest with you. So first of all, you need to make sure your absence policy is a huge reason a lot of people like me go virtual, even outside of pandemic, because they have medical needs and the classes or the university only allows X amount of absences. And when they need to drop everything and go to the hospital or they need treatment, like I have a friend with cystic fibrosis and he has to go in to get treatments. He's had a couple lung transplants, like his life has to be flexible for that. And again, an incredibly smart individual. That's another thing, is that we kind of teach ourselves. So we end up being pretty smart just as a whole, because we become mini doctors with our disabilities, and we've been teaching ourselves for years and adapting this able-bodied environment, so there's a lot of things. And honestly, absence policies is a huge deal. Individual classes for accessibility, you have to create a syllabus or a structure that is structured enough to create assignments, but you also have to educate your educators in being flexible. You have to make it so that, like, I can't do biolab. I can't dissect a pig, but I can identify the structures inside a pig and I can do other things. And it's that flexibility that a lot of educators, in my experience, lack. And that is something we should be training them for. Do you know, like special education is separate right now. And I'm one of the people who doesn't believe in that, because I believe that everyone that's separate but not equal is not equal. Right. And if you're getting separate education, if you need supports or accommodations, that's different. Special ed is a whole new thing. And that's just an excuse to exclude people, to be honest with you, in my opinion. And so, that is a huge deal. Also, the excuse that your college is old does not mean that you can just say that and be like, oh, okay, no more ADA, I guess I'm fine, because that was an excuse that was presented to me.
Mhm.
Oh, these buildings were built in the 60s, way before the ADA. Just a little context for you, the disability rights movement started in the 60s as well with many other civil rights movements. However, it took till the 90s to get the ADA because of a lack of community support. And gee, you look around and you wonder why, this is why. This is why it takes forever. This is why it's not enforced, and people think they can get away with it. And the dog is again freaking out about nothing. So, or maybe he's just really upset about this. I don't know.
He's upset.
He is. So honestly, I think that they need to spend their enormous checks that they get from the students in making campus accessible. And I also think another thing that's really important is when you have a disability services office or you have people evaluating these things, make them disabled individuals. We are the best judges. I am no expert in how to make a room accessible for someone who's deaf or blind. I have no clue how to do that. And I do not pretend to. I know the basics, but not intricate. And I have friends who are both deaf and blind and have told me what they need. That's awesome, because I have no freaking clue. But I do know about wheelchair accessibility. Meanwhile, my friends don't. So when you need an issue like this solved, you need to get someone who actually has the disability to come in and say, you need to do this, you need to do this, and you need to do this. And, we're great with diversity and inclusion. Ryder has a whole center for it. It's amazing. It's run by an amazing person who is a huge supporter of mine and everything, and she's great. And she specializes in making sure that the minority community is being heard and included. She herself is a minority, but not my kind. Do you know what I mean? And that's great. It's fine. And I think that she has this position because she's passionate about it, and because as a minority, other minorities feel open to talk to her. That's a great mindset that we have. Like a recent push of making African American history or anything like that being taught by Black people. That is a great idea because they can speak to the experience and they can do all these things. But why can't it be the same for disabled individuals? Why can't I have this conversation about getting this house accessible with literally anyone who has a physical disability? Like just one person. I just need one. Why aren't there more disability? There's not a disability studies minor in a lot of places, but there's one for African American, there's one for Latin American, there's one, and I'm not complaining about that. That diversity is amazing and I love it. But where are my peeps at? Like, where is my history? Where are my teachers? Where are all these people? And it's not like I'm like, if you're not able-bodied, you can't teach the class, get out. Like, I don't want that. I took a disabilities across cultures class this semester. Phenomenal. I loved it. Not taught by someone with a disability that I know of. And actually, no, she told me she doesn't have one. And that's fine. She's a great person. She offers a great perspective, but where are people like me? So I think when you make a statement saying that you are inclusive and you're committed to that, first of all, include disabled people in that statement because it's usually racial, ethnic, all these things, and disability is not in there. But also like make your staff and teachers or whatever faculty reflective of that commitment. I'm not the only group that's asked for it. And because of things that have been blowing up recently, like with the George Floyd situation and that guy who with the Asian women who recently had that situation.
Yeah, Georgia.
Because of those I'm not suggesting this is the way to go, but because they're so high profile, everyone is drawing attention to it and people are getting their voices heard. We're not. Right around the time of George Floyd killing, there was a guy who was actually a homeless man, but he used a wheelchair, who was shot with rubber bullets. And not a single person's talking about it. Wow. And that is the problem right there.
Wow. I mean, you're certainly bringing voice to all these issues now, so I'm grateful for that. I think that's really important. That's where it starts, is with these critical conversations that can sometimes be a little uncomfortable, right? So let's talk about fraternities and sororities, because you're a lifelong member of Phi Sigma Sigma. So are there things that fraternities and sororities can do to be more attractive to those with disabilities so they can have the same experiences as an able-bodied person?
So as much as I love being carried into a building like Cleopatra, sometimes it's nice, and I have a really, I feel like I have a good sense of humor about my life, because that's just my father is like that, and that's, you know, he was a stay-at-home dad actually when after I got sick, so he and I are very close, and that's just how he presented things, and that's kind of how I adopted it, you know, with the joke and everything like that. So you know, sometimes I do make a joke out of it, and I give a mocking little like hello wave and like making fun of myself about being carried in. Um, and even when my friends are just like, dude, you're being carried into a building by hot muscle guys. Why are you? And you know, it's, I mean, yeah, sure, it's kind of nice, but I don't love it, to be honest with you. I find it, I don't let people push my chair unless I'm literally dying. Like, losing consciousness, about to faint, like whatever, no one touches my wheelchair. Because it feels like a lack of control over something that I can control, you know, and it really creates this like weird feeling that someone else is moving me. And I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Without my permission, like people have just straight up moved me without asking because I was in the way. And I turn around and I'm like, what's your problem? Like, don't do that. But anyway, so honestly, I think that you guys, everyone who wants to help and who is in a fraternity or sorority, look around in your house. You know what I mean? Like, think about, one thing I tell people to think about often, if you don't know someone who has a physical disability, think about your grandparents. Unless you have very spry grandparents, the chances are that they use a cane or walker, maybe they stumble, or maybe you have to like, you know, put your arm out for them to kind of lean on. If your grandparents are having problems getting into your house, it's definitely not accessible for me. So if it's something that you're really interested in, if it's something that you want to draw more attention to, then that's what I would suggest you do. And just think about it in a different perspective. And also reflect on everything that you've gained from your sorority or fraternity experience. And think about, is that something that you want to spread to other people? I'm going to bet that you do, because I'm sure you had a great time. And just think about, you know, we're people too. We have social lives just like you. They might look different. Maybe I can't go in the restaurant we picked for dinner tonight. That's happened before. But that doesn't mean that we don't want the social experiences that you guys have. And it doesn't mean that we like being alone in our rooms, like doing whatever, you know. I am a very social person. I like hanging out with my friends, and I like people in general. And sometimes the physical barriers get in the way of that. And what's worse is when you have those barriers and no one does anything for you. So, you know, just trying to bring an inclusive mindset to everything you do, and think about the great experiences you have and the fact that other people want them as well.
Well said. I love it. So what does the future look like for Bridget? What are we thinking on the horizon after graduation, things like that? What do you want to get into?
So I do want to actually go into elementary education.
Nice.
With I'm doing special ed right now. And you know, I love kids. I just love them. Also, side note, kids ask the most hilarious questions. They are just awesome. They have zero filter.
Right.
And like that lack of filter just opens up a great, honestly, hilarious and great questions. Like I had this kindergarten girl go, well, wasn't your mom scared? Like, how did she feel? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, well, she just found her baby and she's all sick. And I'm like, no one in my life has ever asked me that. And this girl was in kindergarten, like, you know, and I love little kids anyway, but I was really reflecting on I knew I wanted to work with the disabled population. I knew I wanted to work with kids. And I was really reflecting on my life, and I just noticed that ironically, the worst parts of my life were in elementary ed, because so much of elementary ed is focused on hand function, running around on playgrounds, doing all these other things. And I really did feel excluded. And, I feel like with that perspective, being in special ed, noticing all these things that disabled people can bring to the table that may not be noticed on the first glance. I really want to make a difference in that population. And, that was, a great way I thought I could do that. And I don't know if this is exactly my future, but I am working on a book.
Beautiful. I love hearing that. I think that's amazing. If you need any tips in terms of, publishing and all that other stuff, hit me up, because we just published a book and it was a fun adventure. And I'm super happy that I did it to be able to leave that legacy for others. And I'm sure you probably feel the same way, is that you want future generations to be able to read about it and learn. And I think you're going to make it. You're the one. I mean, you're the one that is going to ultimately create that world where people who have disabilities won't have to continue to fight for accommodations. It's going to be because of your work.
Honestly, I hope so. And, it's kind of a double-edged sword there, though, because, I was taught to be a self-advocate, and people have treated me very poorly. And it has taught me to be determined and to be a fighter. And I don't always want to fight, and sometimes it's really hard and challenging. But I learned so many skills throughout my life that a lot of my friends right now are dealing with. They don't know how to handle the situation because they didn't have those skills at 5 years old. Do I want to be insulted on my intellectual intelligence? Not really. But, it did teach me things. And so that part is always tricky for me. People are always like, oh, well, if you had that genie wish, whatever, you'd probably wish for no disability. And I'm like, I don't know. I have a service dog who loves me, and I have a very close family. The disability brought us closer. I have great friends who don't really give a crap about what I look like or what wheelchair adoptive technology I may or may not use. I became very strong from it, and I help people like me. Not really sure I would change it from the beginning.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. We do love really good food here at Fraternity Foodie. I have to be very transparent about this. And I want to know, next time I'm in town, maybe speaking to the fraternity and sorority community at Ryder, I want to know, where should I go for really great food near campus? What's your go-to spot?
So I've never been on campus, ironically enough. With all these, well, I mean, I've been on campus, but I don't know the area very well. That is tricky. You see, I'm a vegetarian, but I like all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm so totally down to try stuff. I will say my two favorite places, I don't know if any of them are near campus, so I apologize. One is Pancheros.
Sure.
In Flemington, and I love that. I make a little burrito, and it's phenomenal every single time I have one. And I also love PF Chang's. They recently made this Kung Pao Brussels sprout, which doesn't sound delicious, but it is. It's so good.
I'm gonna have to give that a try. My daughter is actually a vegetarian, and so I'm always looking for vegetarian dishes. And so now you've just kind of enlightened me. And now I'm gonna go out to PF Chang's and pick this up for her.
Yeah, well, actually, PF Chang's has a really good selection. But the other thing, if you're vegetarian, if you go to places that are kind of like build your own situation, they're perfect, because you're just like, no meat.
Right.
No problem. That's why I like Pancheros too, because like there's no cross-contamination, and I can be like, put those veggies on there.
Right. Totally. I totally get it. My daughter loves the same thing. That's why she likes Blaze pizza. She can make her own pizza and just remove any meat from the pizza. And so,
Jersey Mike's also has a veggie sub.
Ooh, very nice. Very
nice.
Good.
Yeah, really good.
I've loved this. This has been great getting to know you a little bit better, Bridget. So if people who are listening, if they want to connect with you on social media, maybe they have some questions for you that you might be able to help answer, where's the best place for them to go and connect with you?
I would probably say Instagram. Okay. Like I am on most social media. I don't really pay attention to TikTok a lot. Sorry, guys. Sorry. But my Facebook group is indeed like for TM people, sorry, Transverse Myelitis people. but like you got to have the disability to get into it. So if anyone who's listening and has it, then like go join, because it's a great community. But probably on Instagram, to be honest with you, it's literally my name. I'm so boring. It's just my name. And it, I check it really frequently. And honestly, I am not opposed to questions. I answer them a lot. And honestly, my biggest thing is like, I prefer questions to you staring at me and like wondering whatever you're wondering. And so, yeah, honestly, and I'm very open about it. And this is something I'm very passionate about. And if it's something, you needed to talk out more, if you want ideas or whatever, I'm very open to that. So I do encourage you guys to, you'll find me very easily. There's not a lot of Bridget Gums out there.
Yeah, I love it. I am super proud of the work that you're doing, and I know you have so much more to give, so I can't wait. I'm going to be your first customer for the book whenever that gets published. And what can I say? I mean, keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you, and I know you're going to make a difference. So keep up the great work. What can I say?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited that I got to do this. I don't really know ways that like I was like going to be advocating and doing these kinds of things. It's just kind of something you fall into, I feel, in my experience. But I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to be repping my peeps, my community. And I really hope there's a point in time when I'm not the only one in Jersey, from what I can tell, doing it. So yeah. But I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Of course, my pleasure. To our listeners, I hope you like this. Please like it and share it with others in your community. And I hope to see you on a future episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.